evening, everyone. My name is Garfield Dunlap. I'm the MPP for the riding of Simcoe North, and I'm here today at Laubach Literacy Awareness Day. It's our second annual Literacy Awareness Day here at Queen's Park. I'm joined by Sue Bannon, who is the president of Laubach Literacy Ontario, and by Gary Patton Porter, who is the vice president of Laubach Literacy Ontario, and also a student who has come through the community-based organizational groups to be here with us this afternoon. Look at, I'm very fortunate as the MPP for the riding of Simcoe North to have three community-based literacy groups in my riding, and I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the importance of community-based literacy here in the province of Ontario, because in many cases, it is the community-based literacy organizations that actually give people a real hand up and a beginning to their final quest to be able to actually properly read and write. And I've seen that on numerous occasions with the organizations in my riding. People who have actually slipped through the cracks of the whole educational system and end up not even able to fill out a resume at the end of their education, or someone who has worked in a plant for 25 or 30 years making widgets or whatever it may be. The plant closes down, moves off to jobs, and moves their jobs to Mexico or China or somewhere else. And these people that have been in the production lines, in a lot of cases, have no other training and are in a very difficult position to try to move on to other careers. And the community-based organizations, in many cases, lift them up. The other thing I want to point out, and say to Sue, to you today, and to Gary, I want you to pass on to your staff in all the different organizations that you represent here today. I want to pass on my thank you to the many volunteers and people who make these organizations a success. They basically work on a pittance. In fact, the pittance has been cut back in some cases 50 or 60% this year. They've almost had no increases since 1997. And the reality is they do excellent work in these communities. And we're here today to draw awareness to that. It's a fraction, a small fraction of the Ministry of Community Training Colleges and Universities budget, and they do invaluable work in our communities. So with that, I'd like to pass it now to Sue Bannon, the president of Laubach Literacy Ontario, and also the CEO of the Midland Area Reading Council in my riding, and a good friend. And Sue, you could go ahead and make a few comments.
Thank you, Garfield, and thank you for thanking and acknowledging all the staff in the literacy programs. Many of them will be watching us now and will have heard your thanks personally. For those that didn't, we will definitely make sure we pass your thanks along to them. This event today is for the sole purpose of thanking the Government of Ontario for providing additional funding for literacy agencies over the past 2 years. This being said, we have been advised that this funding will not be continuing, and that we will be required to go back to what will technically be 1997 funding as of April 1st. Many agencies are at risk of laying off staff, cutting programs, and or possibly agency closure, not to mention the detrimental effect this will have on Ontarians that need our services. Today we are here to ask the provincial government to provide ongoing, adequate, stable funding for community-based literacy programs across the province of Ontario, to help us to support our learners to get back to work and have a better quality of life, something that we're all entitled to. Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, I joined the organization when I was 40. I had trouble reading and writing. I worked for a family business. I was not able to do everything that I would needed to do in filling out invoices. So I went back to the community-based program in Barrie, where I worked very hard for 4 years and achieved my GED, which is a graduating education diploma. I always thought that I had everything in life. I had a family, a house, a good job, but there was always something missing. And it wasn't until I achieved my grade 12 that that's what I was missing in my life. And it's changed my life. I now my brother and I are owners of our business. We employ a couple people. I would never have been able to do any of this without the upgrading at my community-based literacy organization. So I'm just here today to show, it does work. The program does work, and without funding and everything else, it scares me to see what's going to happen. So that's what we're here today, to bring awareness to the fact of funding, and that's why we're here. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Sue. Just in closing, I think it's important, I want to point out a couple of examples, people that are very close to me. My mother-in-law is a former teacher, and in her years of retirement, and she doesn't do it anymore, but for at least 15 years after she retired as in her teaching career, she took on friends and neighbors in the community that we grew up in, people, young men and women who couldn't properly read and write, and they'd gone through they passed their grade 8 or their grade 12, and they were not in a position to properly read and write. And she actually did it at her home, and they'd bring her cookies and that sort of thing as a volunteer. These are the kind of people that represent community-based literacy in Ontario today. The other example I like to use about the importance of literacy, and if you go back to some of the Toronto Dominion Bank studies, every time you increase the level of the percentage of people that can properly read and write in the province or in the country, it amounts to billions of dollars in economic growth to the country. But being a sports fan and a good hockey fan, one of my heroes in sports was Jacques Demers.
Yeah.
Jacques Demers was the last coach of the Montreal Canadiens that won the Stanley Cup in 1992-93. And after he had won the Stanley Cup, and if you can imagine a gentleman, a hockey coach in that critical, high-pressure job, this man admitted after he had won the Stanley Cup and he'd left the career as coach that he didn't know how to properly read and write. And actually, though, in that wonderful career, had won a Stanley Cup, which is almost, it's considered to be a very, very important role for a coach. And since then, Jacques Demers has been, advocating on behalf of literacy across our country. So this is important. The Awareness Day is important here. There's over 60 people here from Laubach Literacy, students and volunteers and staff people. And I know they've got over 20 deputations today. And also we have a reception luncheon at noon hour in room 228. And with that, I appreciate your attention, and thank you very much for your attention here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
Yeah, one question is how many funding or how much funding you ask for or you need for the community service?
I think Sue can probably answer this better, but the increases we got last year after a lot of questions in the House and finger pointing, this sort of thing, there was a substantial increase in the 2009 budget. That the government did say was over 2 years. However, that brought them from 1997 levels. Well, now on April the 1st, this money's gone back. The very minimum we would want is back up to this year's level, like the 2010-2011 level budget, which they vary from organization. But we're not talking about millions of dollars here. We're talking about organizations that get base funding, like somebody like the Midland Area Reading Council was up around $100,000 in funding last year. Now they're being cut back to effective April the 1st to like $60,000, if I'm not mistaken on that, Sue. Do you want anything more to add to that?
No, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
All the agencies across the province are at different funding levels, depending on the community area and however it is determined that funding is done. But basically right across the whole province, everybody has been cut back to basically what will amount to be 1997 levels. We have not had even a cost of living increase since in over 10, 12, 13 years. So it's going to be very devastating and very critical to the community-based agencies.
I think it's also safe to say, these organizations, I'm so proud of what Sue does in my riding in Midland Area Reading Council, and she's actually a leader in the province. But I can tell you, they tap into community resources, you name it, bake sales, spelling bees, walkathons, all these sorts of things, just to keep the organization afloat. And literally thousands of hours of volunteer work goes into it as well from different people in the community that come out to help the students. What we're asking for, though, is just a little bit of relief on that. Going back to the 2010, 2011 levels would be fairly important at this time. And we'd like to see actually also a factor that would index it so it would increase each year somewhat as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.